So today we're coming from left field. We haven't done it too often. We're talking about real estate in the US of A, and we've been fortunate enough to have Brandon Rickman on today. 25 years in real estate, has flipped 500 plus houses over the last 25 years, which in my maths is roughly 20 houses a year. So I'm keen to get to the bottom of that, Rach. Raised millions in private capital and developing storage facilities as well. So this guy's done a lot in his 25 years of real estate, and I think it was in the blood from what he tells me. So, Rach, I'm keen to really get into the weeds of flipping houses, because in Australia we don't do this a lot. We don't talk about doing it a lot because we just perceive it as high risk.
Yeah, I'm so excited to find out more about this, especially the American market as well.
Absolutely. So let's combine the both and get into it. I'm John, this is Rachel, and this is Property. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Yeah, now even more so because it's 8 o'clock in the evening in Atlanta, so we're wary of your time, so appreciate you taking the time out to chat. Let's maybe start with where it all began for you. You mentioned that your dad was a builder, so was real estate in the genes from an early age?
It was, yeah. So my dad was a builder, developer. My brother and I both grew up in construction around real estate. When we were young, it was, sweeping out houses that he was building or cleaning up trash in the yard. And then eventually we kind of went the old school method. He taught us how to do everything on a house from start to finish. So we would be digging footings, pouring concrete, roofing a house, hanging sheetrock, all the different aspects of it. So we both grew up doing that our whole lives. My brother is still on the commercial side. He's a commercial developer, and I focused on the residential side. So it's definitely in our blood.
Yeah, great. And so we're thinking like at age 12 or 13, what am I going to school for? I just want to do this full time with Dad and build an empire of my own.
Not exactly. I actually, you might find this interesting. I planned on being an attorney and went to college, and after college decided I don't really want to be an attorney. I don't love attorneys in my working with them. Some of them are great, but I think at the time I really just wanted to find an industry that I could make a lot of money in, to be honest, when I was young. And so I thought attorneys make a lot of money, I'll do that. But kind of got back to my roots after college and realized, it's not all about making money. There's more important things in life. And want to do something that I enjoy and something that gives me time freedom, financial freedom, flexibility in my schedule. And real estate, as you know, lines up perfectly for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, as we know over here, it's a very different beast over there, the American real estate markets. But where I suppose came the specialty of saying, well, I'm going to flip houses, because as I said in the intro, it's a high risk strategy in our minds. Did you see it as back to the concept of make as much money as we can in the quickest time frame?
No, I didn't. When we started out, I was married and my wife was a school teacher. I was working for another builder in town, and we would just find a house. We found a house in our neighborhood that the people that lived there hadn't taken care of it. They were looking to sell it at a discount just to be done quickly. And so we went in, looked at it, made them an offer. We bought it. We actually did all of the work ourselves, which took a lot longer and probably cost us more money in the long run rather than hiring contractors. But at the time, we didn't know any better. So we flipped that house, made good money on it, and then, started looking for another one. But it was small scale. It was just my wife and I, and, we might bring in an electrician or a plumber to help. Really didn't have a vision of building something massive at the time. It was just, a new way to make some additional income to add to our normal 9-to-5 jobs.
Yeah. So in Australia, there's a lot of cost to go in and out of properties, stamp duty when you're buying and things like that. Is it the same in America? What's the cost to get in and out when you're doing a house flip?
Well, I would say there's probably a lot of similarities, I'm assuming, between the two. But, with buying houses and flipping houses in the United States, we depending on how you find it, obviously you can buy it on the market through the MLS or the FMLS. We do a lot of off-market strategy. So we're doing cold calling, texting, direct mail. We send a ton of direct mail every month. And so we're trying to find people, and we target people who are behind on their taxes, or they inherited a property. It's gone through a probate court, so they inherited the property. They may not want it. So we target those people, and we send them postcards and tell them, if you're interested in selling, please give us a call at this number. So we can call that outbound marketing. So they will call us, and then we negotiate with them. If we get the property under contract, we'll put down earnest money, which is usually about 1% of the purchase price. So if it's a $300,000 house, we'll put down $3,000 earnest money. And then we'll go to the closing and, buy the house, pay the house. Most of the time we're paying cash, or we'll use hard money lenders, private lenders, institutional lending. And so that's just the purchase price of the house. And then whatever our rehab costs are going to be. And so a lot of times we'll fund that ourselves, or we'll borrow that from investors as well. Other than that, it's property insurance, obviously, to make sure that, nothing happens to the property or anybody working on the property while we're doing it, which is relatively inexpensive. It's $1,500 to $2,000 a year for property insurance. So it's not a huge price. And then the utilities to do the work while you're doing the work. And then when we sell it, obviously we're listing it on the open market, so we're paying commissions on that. So it's really just the purchase price of the house, and then the rehab costs of the house are the major costs.
And just for our listeners, we've got capital gains tax in Australia. So if we hold the property longer than 12 months or the asset at all, we get a 50% exemption on that capital gains tax. How does that work in the US?
So in the US, you have to have the property as a primary residence for 2 of the last 5 years in order to not pay capital gains. So unfortunately, in our business, we're paying capital gains.
And you're paying capital gains on the whole profit?
Correct.
Yeah, so that would eat into your profits. And obviously you're doing the numbers on that, and you coach and educate others how to do the same. But that must take a major impact on the bottom line.
Yeah, I think so. Our average profit per deal over the last 12 months is $48,000. That's total profit after everything. So I think, when I talk to people that we're coaching and teaching, and we talk about using private lenders or using hard money lenders, and sometimes they're charging 12, 13, 14%. And a lot of people have the same response. They're like, whoa, that's a ton of interest. Why are we paying so much interest? That's going to eat into our profit. Well, when you negotiate on the deal, if you consider what those costs are going to be, and you put that into your budget, well, then it's taken care of as part of the budget. So obviously we have to find deals that have enough margin so that, we can not only pay those fees, but also pay the capital gains tax and still have profit on the back end.
Yeah, interesting.
And in Australia, when we're looking at development opportunities, I think, and it sounds though it's the same, you might look through 100 and there might be 10 that look appealing for you, and you end up doing one. I imagine I'm picturing a call center in Atlanta where you're helping and coaching and educating others. You're getting 100 inquiries a day. You're picking off the good ones for yourself, obviously, and then teaching the others how to find the other ones. But when you talk about before going and letterbox dropping or sending out emails or phone numbers, calling them, etc. How are you getting hold of that database of I suppose distressed properties, what we call them here? How do you capture that, and is that readily available for everyone in the States?
It is readily available. So national average here in the United States is 2% of people who are selling a property are motivated sellers or distressed sellers. So 2 out of every 100 calls are going to be potentials. And then, we have to look at the property and negotiate the price. So it's definitely a numbers game. In our coaching business, we teach other people how to do it. And show them how to do it. I actually use my computer and show them, this is how we pull the data. This is how we break up the data. This is how many we text. This is how many, but we don't actually share in the deals with them. So for our specific business, when I look at a property, I'm looking at it for multiple different exit strategies. So when a seller calls, and we start talking about price and trying to understand their situation, condition of the property, I'm thinking to myself, do I want to buy this and keep it as a long-term rental? Does the rent rate, the average rent rate in that market justify, based on the cost of the house, can I keep it in cash flow? I never buy for appreciation. I don't know, if that's something you guys preach and teach as well, but I think the people who got hammered in the last downturn was they were buying solely for appreciation. Hey, it doesn't matter if I make any money right now. Hopefully the value of the property goes up over the next 3 to 4 years, and then I sell it and make money. Terrible strategy, in my opinion. Because what if it doesn't? What if the market doesn't?
Okay, this is a very interesting point, Brandon. I have heard this before from many people in the States. They're like, and I looked at them silly just as much as we're looking at you silly, in the point that in Australia, we're buying, generally speaking, for the capital growth of the property over time. And categorically, we can say property doubles every, say, 10 to 15 years, good valued property or good blue chip property in Australia, right? And the last person I spoke to in America was the same. They're like, okay, we buy property for cash flow and for yield, and the capital growth is almost a bonus. Why is it the fact that there is more volatile markets in America that you don't rely on the capital growth, or what's the reasons for us not focusing on that appreciation?
So I would clarify by saying if you have the foresight to look at 10 years, 15 years down the road, I think it's perfectly fine. Most of the people that we're talking to are looking at from a short-term turn. So either a flip or even on a rental, they're thinking, I'm not making any money, but I'll hold it for a year or 2 years and then turn around and sell it. And what we've seen in the US is that the market can change quickly. And if it does, and you're only buying for appreciation, and 2 years later you want to sell the property, you can't sell it because you could be upside down. Okay. So if you buy for cash flow, where you're making $100, $200, $300 a month, and the property does appreciate over a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's great. You had cash flow and you make money when you sell. But if it goes down, you don't have to sell right away because you're making positive cash flow. But I will say, if you're going to hold the property for 10 years or more, I would say no concern whatsoever about buying for appreciation. I still want my people that I talk to have some cash flow because I don't want them to lose money every month. If they're losing $200 or $300 every month, waiting on the sale to come 10 years down the road, they're taking money out of their pocket. So I don't recommend that. But I do think, and the first two rental properties that I bought, one of them I kept for 10 years and the other one I had for 5 years. Both of them doubled in value in that time. And so I sold them after they had doubled in value. I had paid down the mortgage on them by renters staying in the house, both houses. And then when I sold them, I had a nice big chunk of cash that I could then use to go buy more properties with.
Yeah. Can I ask some of your core philosophies that you teach in your coaching? Because obviously they're very different markets, and I think the American market and the Australian market are so vastly different. I would love to hear the core strategies of what you're teaching people when they are flipping houses.
Yeah, so I think the three cores that we focus on are how to find off-market properties, how to fund off-market properties, and then how to fix off-market properties. So those are kind of the three: find, fund, and flip. And so finding is a lot of the off-market strategies that I discussed with different strategies. Some of the strategies that we teach are free, and that could be looking on Facebook or Craigslist or working with agents to try to find a property at a discount. So we teach both paid and free methods for finding off-market properties. And then for funding, we teach, and I break it down into 3 buckets. Rachel, you probably know way more about this than I do, but the 3 buckets that we kind of break it down into are institutional funding, hard money lending, and then private lending. And so we teach all 3 of those depending on the situation. Obviously, if you're doing a long-term rental, you would prefer to do a DSCR loan or something with an institutional bank where you can get 6 to 7% interest rates currently in the States. But if you're flipping a property or, wanting to use private money, then we teach you how to find private investors and how to work with hard money lenders who are charging the 10, 12, 14% interest, but they're more flexible. They don't require all the paperwork. So we teach that on the funding. And then the flip is about working with contractors, getting quotes from contractors, what contracts to use with them, how to hold them accountable to make sure that they're done on time and on budget, and all those different aspects to make sure that you get into the property and get out of the property on time and on budget so that you can make money and move on to the next one.
Yeah, great.
When I think about real estate in the US, and you mentioned the GFC and how that took such a large hit on everyone's lives, subprime lending, etc. That the 12 to 14% scares me a little bit. Do you? And obviously you teach that with the risk in mind, but do you still feel that your clients and people you're working with can make some profit with those interest rates at that height?
Yeah, I mean, we've been paying interest of 10 to 12% for 10 years, and we have a private lending business as well. So we loan money to other investors at 12%, sometimes 1 or 2 points on top of that. So it's usually 1 or 2 points plus 12% interest is kind of the going rate. But they're short term. These are one of two options. They're either buying the house to remodel it and sell it as quick as possible. So that's 3 to 4 or 5 months. Or if they're looking to do it as a long term, they're buying it for a rental. And I've done this personally with my rentals, is I would get that loan up front and they would give me the purchase price plus 20, 25,000, 30,000 to make it rent ready. I would get it rent ready, and then I would put a tenant in place. Once I had a tenant in place, I would then go refinance out of that through a DSCR loan, through a bank or institutional lender, and pay off that private lender that was the 12 or 13% interest using a DSCR loan. Because now that I have a tenant in place with a year, 2 year, 3 year lease, and they're paying whatever their amount is, their monthly rent, I can now go to an institutional bank and show them that information. They'll give me a loan to take out the hard money lender.
Can you just tell me what a DSCR means?
Yes, I apologize. I forget the difference in the real estate market. So it's fascinating. I'd love to hear more about the real estate market there as well. But DSCR is debt to service coverage ratio.
Okay.
So in the US.
Yeah, see, we use that in lending here, but we never use the term like that. I just found it so interesting. Yeah,
you might start using that.
Yeah, maybe I will.
DSCR.
Yeah.
So the banks like to see about 1.25 DSCR, so 1.25 debt to service coverage ratio. So you kind of know, again, and we teach this with people who are wanting to buy and hold properties. When you're going into it, look at what you're buying it for, how much you're going to spend to get it rent ready, how much your tenant's going to pay, what's the market rent going to get. When you go to get a loan on the back end and refinance and pay off the private lender, they're going to want to see 1.25 DSCR. So you've got to make sure that the property you're going to buy has enough rent once it's completed to cover that 1.25, or you're not going to be able to refi out of it.
This is really intriguing. I'm keen to dig deeper into all this, Rach, and you probably more so because you're in this land every day. We're going to take a break and then we'll come back and delve a bit deeper, Brandon.
Sounds great.
This is Property is brought to you by Sphere Home Loans. Sphere Home Loans is a mortgage broker that helps our listeners all around Australia. So, if you want to get into your first home sooner, looking at upgrading, an additional property, or want your current mortgage reviewed, just search Sphere Home Loans or click the link in the show notes, and their dedicated brokers will be able to help you wherever you are. If you are, however, after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to moneypodcast.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. That's moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help.
1.5 is the DSCR ratio. In Australia, we're talking like 6 and 7, aren't we?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
6 or 7%?
Yeah, well, I think when our clients talk about interest rates of 7%, they like, oh, wow, that's way too high for us. So them hearing you say 12 to 14%, they're falling off their chair right now saying, well, how can this possibly work in Australia? And I think the difference is the value of the property in relation to the rent. And I think that's where in Australia there's probably a misalignment where, because you might have, say, $1 million real estate here that'll rent for $600 a week, for example, right? So there's some major holding costs when you're paying 6%. If you're paying 12%, you go broke very quickly.
Very quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have to make it extraordinary. You have to make an extraordinary profit on that property to be able to warrant a 12 or a 14% rate. But what sort of, if you bought a house for $500,000 there, what may it rent for?
So it used to be up until about 2 years ago, we would use a 1% rule. So if you paid all in cost is $200,000, you want to get $2,000 or more per month in rent. So it's a little worse than that now. It's gotten worse recently, but if you're going to pay, let's say $250,000 for a house, which is an average rent, it's actually a pretty nice rental house in our market in the States. Not if you're looking at like California, super expensive. Manhattan, New York is super expensive. Atlanta, where I am, is still one of the great cities where you can still buy property at a decent price, and it's a major metropolitan area. We have Georgia Pacific and Home Depot and Coca-Cola, a lot of big organizations here, but you can still buy property. I mean, we buy property every day for $70,000, $80,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. So
Wow.
a $250,000 house is a really nice rental house. I mean, it's in really, really good shape, and it's going to rent for $2,500 to $3,000 per month.
That's extraordinary. When you were saying that the profit of a property flip was $48,000, I was thinking that doesn't seem worth the effort. But in my mind, property prices start at double what we're talking now.
Really?
So I haven't seen somebody buy for under $500,000 for a very long time.
Okay. So it's very different real estate
Very
market there than
different,
it is here.
yes. So
Wow.
that's $250,000 renting for $2,000 a month. That's more than double.
Yeah, it's a great rental yield, and that obviously now makes sense as to how you can do that and have that positive cash flow scenario, and continue to add value to the property and not breaking the bank as a result of having the potentially a higher interest rate. You mentioned about California and obviously you're in Atlanta. Do you teach this model to flip houses anywhere in the country, or is it specifically to Atlanta itself?
I do, anywhere in the country. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the price points are different based on where you live. I encourage people to start flipping houses in the area they know and live, because they can drive and they know the streets and the high school districts and things like that that'll change the value. But we have a lot of people who start in their local market and then grow to other cities and other states around the country.
And does most of that, you mentioned early on about you doing the heavy lifting, getting your hands dirty with the reno, do a lot of your clients outsource that, or are they hands-on in the beginning to limit costs?
No, I try to teach them all to outsource it, hire contractors. Again, I think if you put it into your budget, so I encourage people to have a contractor come with you to the property, look at the property, explain everything you want to do, get a quote from them, and a schedule, how long it'll take and how much it'll cost. And then you use that in your due diligence to figure out, is this the property that I can buy and do the rehab and then sell and make a profit? And I think, as far as, so I have some friends who flip houses in California, and they're more in the $1.5 million, $2 million price range. And their profit, on those is $400,000, $500,000. So it's a similar strategy, but obviously the numbers are very different than what we do here in Atlanta when you have a $250,000 house.
Yeah.
Would you say the risk is higher at a lower price point?
I think the risk is higher at a higher price point. Because if I compare those two, in Atlanta, where you have a house, let's say you buy it for $200,000, you spend $50,000 on it, you're going to have $250,000, you're going to sell it for $325,000 to $350,000, pay your fees, you're going to make $45,000 to $50,000 on it. There's a lot more people in the States who can afford a $250,000, $300,000 house than can afford $1.5 million house. So your pool of buyers goes way down when you're selling $1 million to $1.5 million, $2 million house. So there's far fewer people who can afford that price point. And so, not to mention, especially with the interest rate we were talking about, like if they're using private money and they're paying 12% interest, if you're borrowing $1 million to buy the house and then another $200,000 or $300,000 to do a rehab, you're borrowing $1.3 million at 12% interest. It's $15,000 a month that you're paying in interest carry. So it eats it up pretty quick. So I think there's much higher risk in the high end than the low end.
Yeah, I'd agree. Brandon, you mentioned the cost of the contractor in a flip situation was $50,000, the example that you used. Just so our listeners can get some context, I'm just going to put one part of one piece of a puzzle here. How much would it cost to renovate a kitchen, just an average kitchen in an average home? Just so we can get some context because I can't imagine being able to do a renovation for $50,000.
It's not much, is it? It's a patio at the back.
I think that wasn't my kitchen.
Yeah. I would say on most of the flips we do, just the kitchen alone is probably $25,000.
Yeah, and that's a brand new kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Cabinets, countertops, appliances. We usually do flooring throughout, so that's not included in that. But that's like a 3-bedroom, 2 baths. So we're redoing 2 baths, which are $5,000 each, roughly.
Wow.
And then the kitchen's 25. Of course, that goes up if you have to do roof and HVAC and water heater and all the mechanicals. But for the most part, $50,000-$60,000 is kind of an average renovation cost.
What's HVAC? Heating, ventilation, air conditioning?
Air conditioning, yeah.
I did not know that.
Great guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds as though the focus for you and your coaching and educating is the kitchen to add the most value to. Would that be fair?
Yes, kitchens and bathrooms. We always tell them, women are the one who buy houses. And they care about kitchens and bathrooms. So we do some stuff on outdoor spaces as well. I mean, we certainly want curb appeal. We want the house to look inviting, the yard and everything. But sometimes we'll do a fire pit in the backyard or a back patio with some string lights and a fire pit. But definitely put the money into bathrooms and kitchens because that's where most people, want to see the upgrades.
The 101 of real estate hasn't changed really. In America, Australia, there's similarities everywhere you go, isn't there? In terms of what you're talking about today, Brandon, is like we've got our differences. There's no doubt about that. But the concept of making money in real estate is the same there in terms of adding value cosmetically. It doesn't sound as though you're doing too much structural improvements to the property because it becomes too costly. But what about I suppose timing the market? Doesn't sound like you haven't mentioned that. So it doesn't sound as though you put too much priority on, this is a good time to buy in Atlanta versus going into another state to buy property because the market's been flat for a period of time. Do you pay any attention to that at all?
Yes, we do. And, having done it for 25 years in this area, I watch it closer than a lot of people do. I've kind of been up with the market, been down with the market. And so I definitely pay attention to it. We went through the 08-09 crash real estate market here, which was awful, but we survived barely. But we survived
with cash flow.
With cash flow, yes, we had some developments we were doing, some neighborhoods and new construction and some different things we were doing, but survived and learned a lot and grew from it. So it was fine. But so obviously in our market, the best selling season is the summertime. So we really have anywhere in the States, the best selling time is late April through September. So summertime, kids are out of school. A lot of people are looking for houses. So that's the best selling time. And we do kind of time our flips. If we're going to flip a house, we'll think, when we finish this, if we finish it late November, it's probably going to sit on the market for 3 months because people aren't buying houses around Thanksgiving. Then you got Christmas, then you got New Year's and then tax season. So, at the end of the year, you've got taxes to do. So we try to time it so that we're not finishing something like November because then we're going to sit on it for 2 to 3 months. But if it's something that we can finish, if we finish something in February, we had several houses we finished in February, and we just assumed in our due diligence period up front, instead of that closing, selling and closing in 30 days, we're going to give it 60 days, or one of them was 90 days because that's not the hot selling season. So we know we're going to sit on it. So let's add 3 months of interest carry to our budget because it might take a little bit longer. And if it sells quick, we made more money. If it doesn't, we're right on budget.
Yeah, great. Now, one of the questions, a little bit more about a couple of things. What amount of deposit do you need there to be able to get into a property? What is, like if you're looking like an institutional lender, what's the minimum deposit one of your investors would need to put down when they're purchasing a home?
So most of the institutional lenders require 10%. So the banks here in town and in the U.S., they're going to require 10% down. Some of the hard money lenders that we work with only require 5% or none. So we have hard money lenders and private lenders that we work with who charge nothing up front. They'll do 100% purchase and 100% of the rehab. You don't have to put anything down.
So they will essentially lend more than 100% of the value of the home?
No, because we're buying the home at 65 to 70% of after repair value. So when we're finding these properties, this might get more into the weeds than you guys want to get.
Yeah.
But we
go there.
We utilize ARV, so after repair value. So if we're buying a house, we'll go search the surrounding area and we want to look at what is the ARV. What can we sell this house for after it's rehabbed, after it's brand new and it looks great. And we look at other houses in the neighborhood that have sold, that have been remodeled. And then we're going to take a multiple of that, usually 70 or 75% of that after repair value. And then we're going to deduct what our rehab costs are going to be. So a quick math, 75% of ARV minus rehab costs. That's our offer price. So again, let's say quick math, let's say the ARV is $300,000. If we were going to offer 75% of that, I said that was quick math, but 240, 250?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Give or take. Yep.
And then let's say our rehab is 50. So we're going to deduct that 50 from that number. So we're going to be right at, let's say 200,000. So our offer price is 200,000. We're going to spend 50 on the rehab. So when we go to a private money lender or a hard money lender, we're going to tell them purchase price is 200, rehab is 50. I want to borrow a full 250. And they'll either say, and we're going to sell it for 300. And so we have to show the value. We have to show the comps that say, this is why we think we can sell the house for 300. But, they'll either require us to put down 5%, or some of the lenders we work with don't require anything. They'll give us the whole 250. So 200 goes to the seller. The other 50 goes into our escrow account. And then we use that 50,000 to do the rehab. And then when we're done, we list it, sell it, and then pay off the loan, and we keep the profit.
And the escrow is your trust account.
Correct.
Yeah.
So are you putting generally cash down into the deal, Brandon, or can you use equity from another property, for example? Or what about the first-time user?
Yeah, you put cash in. You can do a second mortgage on another property, or pull cash out of that. But most of the time you are putting cash. We usually, again, when you're doing a lot of deals, if you're doing 4, 5, 6 deals at a time, you get limited on how much cash you can put into all of them. So that's why we work with some private lenders who allow us, 100% financing, so we don't have to put our own cash in. But by the time you pay for closing costs, which is usually 2 or 3% of the purchase price, and then you're paying the attorney for title search and all that kind of stuff, and then you're paying for insurance, I would say you're at a minimum in for $10,000. Most of the stuff that we do, we're in it for 30,000 of our own money. On most of
I
our
might
deals.
move to Atlanta and do
Yeah,
a few
so
of
there's
these
no
deals.
what we would call stamp duty. So if we're buying a house for $800,000, we might pay the government $40,000.
No.
You would not.
No, we don't do any of that.
And how about land tax? So, if I'm an investor and I'm holding 3 properties in one particular state, the government will charge me for everything I own every month. Every year I pay a tax for the properties I hold. Do you pay land tax when you're holding multiple properties?
We do, yes. We pay property tax, which covers the structure, the house and the land, and it's done by the state and by the county. So each county has a different amount that you pay, but they tell you up front when you're closing what that's going to be. And so it's usually part of the mortgage. So our mortgage lenders here will include property tax. So they go to the county website, they figure out what the property tax is going to be. And then when you're paying your mortgage every month, they're holding a percentage of that they're going to pay the property tax when it comes due in October. But it's usually like my primary house, my property tax is like $4,000 a year. So most of the flips that we do and the rentals that we have are, $2,000 a year for property tax.
Very interesting.
So, like the stamp duty is a big one.
It's a big one.
If you're like on a traditional $250K property, you might only pay $8 to $10K in stamp duty. So
Find me a $250,000 property.
correct. I haven't yet. Well, I can find you one, but it'd be in very remote regional Australia, that's for sure. And that's obviously the difference in the modelling, which is great to listen to. And obviously tax at the end, we get a capital gains tax exemption for holding it 12 months. So you don't have to tick it over to the 13th month. You can just sell it when you want to, essentially.
Yeah.
Can
like
I
that.
can I ask another question about risk? And I might be wrong with this, but I always assume, so in Australia, when we are borrowing, we're personally liable for any debts. And if something were to go bad, that's you're personally liable for that, and that would affect you for many years after that. After that property something were to go bad, what's the risk for you when you're buying a home? Let's say it drops in value. What's the risk to the individual?
Yeah, that's very important to me. Fortunately, knock on wood, out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of loans, we haven't ever not paid an investor back what we agreed to pay them back. We have lost money on some of our deals, but we took the hit personally. We didn't have our investors take the hit. So if we sign a personal guarantee on everything. So whether it's with an institutional bank, a hard money lender, or a private lender, I'm signing a personal loan on it, personally guaranteeing that it will get paid back. Again, when we're flipping houses, there's less risk because we're buying it so far below what appraised value is or what after repair value is going to be. So, worst case scenario for an investor, they loan me the money and I decide to come move where you guys are. They own the property. They're in first lien position on the property. So now they have the property and they have it at 75% of what the appraised value will be or what the after repair value will be. So their loan is backed by the property first. And so then if they did have to go after someone personally, it would only be the difference between whatever they could sell the property for to recoup the portion of their money that they invested plus the difference. So, if they loaned $200,000 on a house, the person that borrowed it disappeared, they were able to sell the house for $150,000. Now they're going to come after that person for the $50,000 difference.
Okay, so they still do come after you personally.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we personally guarantee everything, and that's why we do a lot of underwriting on the front end to make sure, and also as a private lender and owning our own private lending business, we do desk appraisals up front. So we have an appraiser who will do a desk appraisal. My business partner and I both look at the property. We come up with what we think our after repair value is, determine how much we're willing to loan the investor on that property based on their history, their background, their experience. And then we have a third party do an appraisal to tell us what they think the property's worth before we loan the money, to try to do the best we can to make sure we're not going to get in a bind.
Yeah, there's so many questions running through my head right now, and apologies to the listeners, but we're going over today. There's a couple of things, Brandon, you mentioned. You said you borrowed the renovation or the improvement costs as well. So in that $250 example, you borrowed the $250 knowing that you only paid $200 for the property. Correct. We can't do that in Australia.
And we call it reno here.
It's a renovation. Yeah. Aussie slang. Yeah. So that's a massive advantage to be able to borrow the renovated costs, because a lot of people might not have that capital in their pocket to do the renovations. They've got the deposit to buy into the property, but then the renovation costs. So that's a huge incentive to be able to do that. The other thing I want to touch on is, in Australia, the little knowledge people know about American real estate is they handed back their keys if they couldn't pay the mortgage and got away scot-free. What are the actual rules on that now in 2025 versus back in 2008?
Yeah, I have to say I've never heard of someone being able to do that in the States or anywhere. I'm sure there were examples, but in all of my real estate, that I never heard of that happening. We had properties back then, so we were developing neighborhoods back then. We were able to do what's called a short sale. So we had a loan with the bank. We had another investor who was willing to buy some of our property below what we owed for it. And so we had to negotiate with the bank, let the buyer negotiate with the bank to figure out a price the bank was willing to accept and the buyer was willing to pay. And then in one circumstance that I'm thinking of, it was for a neighborhood that we built out, that we developed a whole neighborhood. I personally took a 10-year note at 3% interest to pay the difference back. So for the next 10 years, I paid an extra house payment to pay the bank back the difference between what they agreed to sell the property to this other buyer for. So that's more common I had other properties during that time that the banks called the loans due. So I had loans that we were paying. The banks called those loans due, and we either had to pay off it was 2 lots that we were getting ready to build houses on. So we either had to pay off the lots or the bank was going to sue us personally. So we paid the 2 lots off. So we were fortunate in those cases, but we sign a personal guarantee on all of them. The banks will come after you. They're ruthless. I had a great relationship with multiple banks that I'd been working with for years and years and years. And when the real estate market stopped, they all called me and said, sorry, we're not banking you anymore. We're calling your loans due in 30 days and there's nothing you can do about it. Pay them off or we're coming after you personally. Yeah.
Sorry, they can call upon the loan.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're paying the repayments, if the value goes down, they can come and say you need to pay that back.
It's not supposed to be just if the value goes down, but in this scenario, when the market was turned upside down, one of the banks called me and said, we're only going to bank our top 10% of our biggest builders in the country. This is a national bank. And you're not one of them. And we know this is going to kill our reputation that we have with you in the years that we've worked together. But unfortunately, that's the message coming down from the top. So your loans are due in 30 days. And if you can't pay them, then we'll take them back.
Wow.
Yeah. See, I've seen that in the commercial space here, but definitely not in the residential space.
Yeah.
It was not fun. We fortunately, like I said, we worked our way out of it, but it was... I love real estate. My wife is a real estate agent. So we love real estate. We talk about it all the time. And, it's great when it's great. And when it's bad, it takes some time to get out of. But again, we were fortunate. We were able to get out of it and pay everybody off and pay all of our lenders back. And so the other thing I think that does now when we go out and are raising more money for our self-storage deal or for our fund that we have, our private lending business, people that know me and know my experience and know my history, I have 25 years of paying lenders back and never not paying one back. So I think that helps with our credibility. Even though we went through some difficult times, it helps them to see, we're credible and we're going to pay it back.
Oh, great.
Given the volatility of, I suppose, the lending system over there, do you feel that a lot of the general public are just not going into real estate because of that? Or it's because in Australia, every second person talks about real estate, like whether to live in a home, that's their great Aussie dream here, or to build a portfolio as to create wealth for the future. Is that the same over there, or is there a little bit of a trepidation around buying real estate?
I think there is. I think there's 2 things. I think one of them is knowledge. People who are not in the real estate industry don't know that there's other options besides going to the local bank on the corner. And so that's what they try to do. Our lending institutions, our banks here, they require, W-2s, tax returns, all the different paperwork to show. So most of the people have to have a job. It has to be paying a certain amount of money. They don't like self-employed. They don't like people who are self-employed and pay self-employment taxes. So their interest rates are usually lower than the other options, but it's so difficult to get a loan through that. And that's how most people who have not been involved in real estate, that's the only thing they know of. They don't know there's any other options to raise money. So that's why there's absolutely a reason to use them in certain circumstances, like we were talking about with the DSCR, if you're looking to do a long-term loan, or if you have a job, a good paying job, and you have good income and you just want to build a rental portfolio on the side, I would recommend going to a bank and using a bank loan because they'll do 30-year mortgages and they'll do them at a lower interest rate. So if you have all the documentation, the income, and the tax records to support that, absolutely go with a bank. But we teach people who come through our program, we also teach them the other options. So you may not be able to go to the bank and get a loan because you don't have W-2s or you don't make enough money to buy this property. You can work with a hard money lender, and there's lots of those all over the country. So they're pooling money together from individual investors, and then they're loaning it out to other flippers. So if you guys are investing in this hard money lender, you put $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 in, they're going to pay you 8%, 9% return on your money. They're going to turn around, pull that together, and then loan it out to other flippers at 12% interest. So they're making the spread. That's what hard money lenders are doing. So that's what we teach. You can get a loan if you have 10% down. You can get a loan through a hard money lender, or if you have friends or family that have a 401k or an IRA, they can give you the money either to put down or to buy the whole house if they have enough. So there's different options, different ways of getting the money. And so, I think knowledge, like I said, is one of the major problems. And the other would be, banks just being so strict about who they lend to.
You didn't mention a mortgage broker there when you're talking about all the different lending arms. Do your clients utilize mortgage brokers?
We do. Yes. We work with mortgage brokers all the time. I think most of the mortgage brokers that I work with, we do have some that do both hard money and institutional banks. Most of the brokers here focus 100% on institutional banks. So they're going to help you try to help you find a loan through, the 10 largest national banks or regional banks in the U.S., which my experience has been the majority of them want all of that documentation. And so again, if you have a good paying job and you're looking to start this on the side, you're looking to buy a rental house, much easier to do, work with a mortgage broker or a bank directly and get a long-term 30-year DSCR loan for the rental property. But if you're looking to buy something and flip it, or you do something quick, and if you don't have tax records or income levels that you need to do it, there's other options that you can get into real estate without having to go that traditional method.
So you could essentially not be working and just flipping houses full time, utilizing the hard lenders.
That's what I've done for 25 years. Yes.
Ah.
I would jokingly question not working. As all of us entrepreneurs, we're the only ones who quit our 9 to 5 so we can work 5 to 9. So yeah, it's lots of hours and lots of work. But yeah, there's a lot of full-time investors in the States who that's all we do is flip houses, buy and sell rental houses and stuff like that.
Doing something you love.
I think we'd
awesome.
have a lot of listeners that would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the concepts are the same, but the outcomes are different because of rules and regs here. And one of those potentially is the tax system. So I'm intrigued about that. You go back to the 250K example, the 300 is what you could potentially sell it for. If there was some 50 grand uplift on that, what sort of tax might you pay in Atlanta on that?
Yeah, it really depends on your overall tax bracket at the end of the year. So it's not done on each specific property. As an example, if you make $250,000 a year, you're going to pay 25%, 30% of your total income. And so for me as a full-time flipper, let's say I flip 20 houses, whatever my taxable income is, I go into that tax bracket. And that's the percent that I pay, which could be 40%. I think our top is 42.5% of your total income.
Not too dissimilar. Yeah, not too dissimilar. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot of your listeners might be interested in the U.S. real estate market based on what you guys are hearing from me tonight.
Well, it's just different, right? And obviously we wanted to get into the weeds today just to say, well, it's not all rose petals. There are risks involved, and we just wanted to obviously outline what those risks are. But are you able to take the profits of one particular property and put it into another to not essentially avoid tax, but to migrate it, I suppose? Yes,
absolutely. So we have a method here. It's called a 1031 exchange.
1031 exchange.
1031, yeah, it's one of the tax codes here in the States. So it's a 1031 exchange. And basically what it says is that the profit you make on this particular, it's for all real estate, commercial, residential, industrial, any kind of real estate. The profit you make on this house or this property, you can 1031 exchange it into another like kind property. So it has to be something similar. You can go from a single family to a multifamily apartment, or from an apartment to a self-storage. That's fine. But you can't go from like, I sold this house and I want to invest it in a crypto business, right? It's got to be like kind. And then there's some parameters around it. So you have to identify your exchange property within 90 days of the closing. So if you decide to do a 1031 exchange, you sell this house, you leave the profit in escrow with the attorney. You have 90 days to identify the next property you're going to exchange into. And then, so you never get that money. The attorney holds it in their escrow account. When you go to close on that next property, the attorney sends that money to that closing attorney so that it's exchanged into the next property. And then you don't have to pay any taxes on a 1031 exchange until you sell it in the end and take the cash out to use personally.
Gotcha.
So you're kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To make major profits, and then at the end of the day, in 20 years' time, you get taxed on a on maybe a larger scale. But
Right.
yeah, that's a good incentive that we obviously haven't got here. So looking at the differences in real estate. I suppose in starting to close this conversation, Brandon, if you had your time again, what would you do differently? Obviously, avoid GFC might be one of them, but what would you do differently, and what would you tell the listeners to be thinking more about?
I would have never sold a property that I've ever bought. I would have kept them all as rental properties because, we do long-term rentals and short-term rentals. And the short-term rentals, obviously, it's a different math problem, but you're able to rent them for a lot more money, so you can pay more for those properties. And they're usually in a resort type area near a beach or a lake or a golf course or something like that, at least the ones that are still doing well now. So you pay a little bit more for those, but because they're on a short-term rental program, you make more. But even the long-term rentals, I mean, I've sold, I don't know how many houses over the 25 years that I've bought and kept for a while or flipped. And if I would have gone back and changed anything, I would have kept every single one. I would probably have hundreds and hundreds of houses right now, and wouldn't be going to find the next flip. So that's one thing. And my plan going forward, as the market has slowed down a little bit here in the States, I'm hoping to find some good rental properties in the next year, 2 years, and I'm going to start stockpiling them once again.
With those rent returns, I think I'd be holding them all as well.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share? You've obviously got an extraordinary amount of experience. Just a top tip that you could give our listeners that you've learned in real estate. The things that you've learned and along the way. What would be your top tip for our listeners?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the things is that I tell people often is don't become emotional over the property. I have one wife, and that's the only person that I'm connected to. Everything else is a business. So real estate is a business, and it's each house is. I'm not going to fall in love with it. I have my primary home, and we're both happy with it. But everything else, it's a product. It's real estate. The property just happens to be a product, and so don't fall in love with it. Don't be emotional over it. Make a wise business decision. And if the numbers work financially, if it makes sense, then it's a wise business decision. And we've had some short-term rentals that, we get to the end of the year and we look back and we make a business decision. One of them was a lake house on a lake and a golf course. And at the end of the year, we looked at it and realized that we didn't make enough income on it to justify the expense. So we didn't want to sell it, but we sold it because that was a wise financial decision. So that's one of the things that I tell people. Don't fall in love with the property. Don't be emotional. It's just a product. If this house doesn't work out, there'll be another one that comes along. And maybe that's the second part is there's no deal that's too good to pass up. There will be more deals. I tell a lot of people, the only thing worse than not finding a deal is finding a bad deal. So don't be so excited to get into real estate that you go and buy a bad deal just because you want to get into real estate. Just, relax, take your time, find the right property that makes sense for your goals and what you're trying to do, and then move forward. If it doesn't work out, keep looking. There'll be another property come along soon.
There we have it. 3 real estate non-negotiables. Well, not non-negotiables, but ones that we probably carry with us here in Australia is try not to ever sell. There'll be obviously times where you do need to sell to pay down debt or to create a lifestyle for yourself or transition to retirement, whatever that might look like. Don't buy with emotion. Keep the emotions out of it.
Yep.
And it's just a game. It's you're buying an asset. You're not buying anything that to do with emotion. And there's another good deal next week is basically what you're saying as well, Brandon.
I love it. Yeah, that is one thing that works for you guys and for us here in the States. 3 great rules of real estate.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Brandon Rickman, the flip genius from Atlanta. Thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed the chat today. There's so many. We may need a second episode for this.
I would love a second episode. I am so fascinated by this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed it as well. It's been fascinating talking to you guys and hearing some of the differences that we have here in the States than you guys do, but have enjoyed it and really appreciate you guys having me on.
No, thank you so much. Go and have some supper over in Atlanta and look forward to chatting again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Any information given in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and you should seek your own property advice before acting on anything you may hear in this podcast. If you want to start or advance your property education journey, John Pidgeon's book, Sort Your Property Out and Build Your Future, is available where all good books are sold, or via the link in the podcast show notes. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective license holders.